Shalom everyone, welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parshat Acharei Mot-Kedoshim. B'ezrat Hashem, it's an amazing week, and also this the Sfirat Omer period, the beginning of Netzach, which is Rabbi Nachman's Sfira, if you want to call it, Netzach of Netzach, 25th day of the Omer. B'ezrat Hashem. All right, so the insights we want to go into are based on Likutey Moharan lesson 24. The beginning of the parsha goes into Yom Kippur. A lot of details in Yom Kippur. Reb Noson himself, in his 3 discourses that he has on this lesson, Likutey Moharan 24. These are Nefilat Apayim, discourse number 4, Birkat Hoda'ah, discourse number 6, and in the section Even Ezer, Ishut number 4. In all 3 of them, Reb Noson touches upon the concept of Yom Kippur because it's so relevant to this amazing lesson. Basically, we're going to go through some points, certain points that Reb Noson touches upon, and developed points. That the beginning of the year starts off with the 10th day being Yom Kippur as the day of atonement. It's a day to forgive the Jewish people of their sins. Okay? Now this requires that the Kohen Gadol enters the Holy of Holies. One day of a year, the only day he's allowed to go in. Bezot yavo Aharon. With this, Aaron enters the Holy of Holies with the sacrifices mentioned in this week's parsha. Plus, in other words, being sacrificed and the blood taken from them, and he goes in with the incense also. So the idea is that he's going to atone for the whole Jewish people, and it's considered like a cover up from any damage done from last year's Yom Kippur until next year's Yom Kippur. It's supposed to be a cover-up, but it's mainly for sins which were done in the past to atone them. This requires him entering this one room, the Holy of Holies, once a year, okay? The idea of the Holy of Holies, Reb Noson explains, is basically, it's a time and space which is above time and space. He's entering an area and a time which allows him, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, to connect to the infinite light. That's the idea of this special room called the Holy of Holies, where it's, even though it's in a physical, technically existence, but yet it's connecting the Kohen Gadol to the infinite light way above. That's why Yom Kippur is on the 10th day. Rabbi Nachman explains in this lesson that the 9 days, the corresponding of the 9 days from Rosh Hashanah till Yom Kippur, Rav Noson explains this, are the 9 chambers created by connecting to the Keter, and the 10th day itself is the actual Keter. So the 9, which is the multiplication done from the 3 sections of the mind. I know this is a bit deep, just want to go to the ideas. It's Chokhmah Bina Da'at, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding being multiplied by each other. So it's 3 times 3 equals 9, corresponding to these 9 days leading up to Yom Kippur. And the 10th day is the actual accessing the infinite light. So the beautiful point is that this invokes atonement for the whole Jewish nation. No matter what they may have done, sins that require atonement and rectification can be achieved on Yom Kippur. To say all the sins, I can't, because there's certain sins that are, that person has to be or killed or whatever. But in general, sins that Jewish people have done and they need atonement, Yom Kippur does the job. So now the point is that in order to activate and effect atonement, the Kohen Gadol has to access the infinite light. This concept is amazing. It shows a person that no matter what you may have done in your lifetime, there's hope by connecting to a level above your true level. That's the idea of connecting to the infinite light. What it does is it activates atonement for what you're going through in your daily struggles, in your daily challenges, to clean all that to start again. However, that it requires the Kohen Gadol, who had to be at a high stature and standing of holiness and piety, to be a true tzaddik. It shows us that such a person, to activate atonement, needs a tzaddik. So for the Jewish people, on a general sense, every year, the tzaddik, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would enter on Yom Kippur to activate atonement for the all Jewish people, and that required him to access the infinite light with the Torah, and the blood of the offerings of the Yom Kippur. Okay. An interesting point is that you take a look in the Parsha Acharei Mot, in the daily service, the Kohen Gadol had to go in and out a few times. And every time he went in and out from the Holy of Holies in and out to do devotions outside of the Holy of Holies, if it was the devotions of the regular day, or was the devotions related to Yom Kippur, he had to, depending on what it was, he had to change his garments. So on the daily sacrifices of the day, he had to don his 8 vestments of the Kohen Gadol, and with anything involving going into the Holy of Holies and the sacrifices associated with Yom Kippur, he had to wear the 4 white garments. And every time he would transform from the white garments to the 8 garments, or back, or vice versa, from the 8 garments to the white garments, he would have to go to the mikveh. Okay? So Reb Noson makes an amazing point. He says that you understand from going to the daily 8 vestments of the Kohen Gadol and then transferring to now the 4 vestments, which are for a higher devotion of Yom Kippur, I can understand him going to the mikveh for that. The concept of the mikveh is a purification stage for when someone is going up a level. For example, a woman who goes to the mikveh, it's to prepare her for marital union, which is to bring down a holy soul. So it's considered up a level. She's leaving the impurity of nida, going into the status of being pure, in order to activate being a vessel to bring a holy soul down to the world. Also, men who go to the mikveh, it's to purify them from what was in the past, to give them a boost upwards from whatever it is. Mikveh is considered a devotion of going upwards, from a lower level to a higher level, as a preparation. For example, men in the morning, they go to the mikveh before davening, for the sake of davening with the purity of the mikveh. Okay? So based on that, we can understand, Reb Noson says, that the Kohen Gadol, when he was involved in the daily sacrifices of the day, the 10th day of Tishrei being a day, so the daily sacrifices of the day, and he was wearing the 8 vestments, and then from there he had to go now to do the devotions of entering the Holy of Holies. I can understand him going to the mikveh and then to don the 4 vestments, because it's going up a level. But why the opposite? Why, when he left the Holy of Holies and I had to go back to do the daily sacrifices, and you have to don the 8 vestments, which is like technically going down a level, why would he go to the mikveh again? He had to go to the mikveh again. So Reb Noson points out something phenomenal, that in the daily struggles of a Jew, reflected in the Kohen Gadol's devotions, which is in and out, in a higher level, and leaving out, going outwards, the going outwards is considered technically an ascent. It's not a descent. It's a descent for the sake of an ascent. This Rabbi Nachman discusses very powerfully in lesson 24, that the way of a Jew to advance is he has to go in and out. It's called in the Kabbalah mate velo mate, touching and not touching. Redifa u'me'akev, running forward and then being prevented. Okay? Ratzo vashov, running forward and then returning. All these terms are in and out. You're in a higher level of holiness and then you're pushed back out. But in reality, the pushing back out is what's going to build you more than anything else. Even though it's a setback and it's like a going out, going into darkness, it's considered an ascent. So too the Kohen Gadol, leaving the Holy of Holies, which is considered a big experience, and then going back out to do the daily sacrifices, he still needed to don to go to the mikveh before donning the 8 vestments, even though it's considered going out, because it's a preparation for a future ascent, and also that in itself creates vessels for the light that he just connected to and achieved and perceived while in the Holy of Holies. So this is an amazing point Reb Noson brings out. Another idea is a question that comes up, that we know that besides the Kohen Gadol entering the Holy of Holies in order to activate atonement for the Jewish people, and the predecessor before that were the sacrifices that the Kohen Gadol offered, and he confessed on them before sacrificing them. He confessed for his sins, the sins of the Kohanim, and then the sins of the Jewish people. There were several times confession was needed on several of the sacrifices for Yom Kippur. And then finally, when he's going into the Holy of Holies, he would also offer a personal prayer when finishing all the devotion of the Torah, the incense and the sprinkling of achat, v'achat, v'achat, 1 up and 7 down, which we know from this week's Parsha, okay? Besides all that, there was what's called the Korban to Azazel, the animal not a korban, the animal that was sent to Azazel, where they would attach like a crimson wool thread on the horns of the goat that was sent, and then the Kohen who was sent would take the animal to a very rough cliff, mountainous, rocky, edgy, sharp cliff, and push from turning the animal backwards, push him from forward, pushing him backwards down the cliff until he was smashed to pieces. And then, if now the crimson wool connected to the horns also was connected to the doors in the temple, if they turned white, that was the sign that the Jewish people achieved atonement. So the question is, if now all the devotion of the Kohen Gadol in the Holy of Holies was doing atonement, why was it also needed to send Azazel, that's what it's called, this cliffy, rocky cliff, to send an animal, and also to have him killed in such an inhumane way? It's inhumane. All the animals' rights, they hear the Torah, they say that's so cruel. You're pushing an animal, killing him in such a very inhumane way. It's a big slap in the face to all the people who are vegetarians and who are pro animals. All the Torah sacrifices, showing that people from their perspective don't understand what's going on. It's inhumane. You're killing animals, poor animals, poor animals. But there's a mission here, and the idea of sacrifices and animals being an atonement for a Jewish person and the Jewish people. In this case, okay, the animal was pushed back. This animal had on it the confession of the sins for the entire Jewish nation. The Kohen Gadol, he did on this animal that was sent to Azazel, this goat, he put all the sins by mentioning the confession. What actually happens when there's a vidui is that by just the speech of the Kohen Gadol, of the confessing of the sins of the Jewish people, that itself went on to the animal. So the animal, even though he's an animal, it's a goat, still it contained the spiritual matter of all the sins of the Jewish people. So meaning, it says several places in the Kabbalah and in the Zohar that this goat, once it takes on it the confession of the sins, it in itself becomes evil. If you let it free, it'll do bad things. It'll damage. It won't be worth keeping it alive because it caused so much damage. Because it's no longer an innocent, simple goat. It has on it the transmission of all the sins of the Jewish people. This shows you the power of this concept of kapara, of atonement. The word kaper, Rashi says in several places in the Torah, it's like the expression that someone, he cleaned his hands like on a towel. So the dirt is no longer on the person's hands, it's on the towel. So the idea is that the animal, even though he's an animal, Hashem created these certain kosher animals to be sacrifices because they can be a vessel for this type of confession of atonement for sins. It's something phenomenal. So in a sense, that the sins are transferred onto the animal. So when now the Kohen Gadol is doing the general confession for the whole Jewish nation on Yom Kippur, it's many sins, okay, on this animal. So there's no more rachmanut, compassion on this animal because it's no longer itself. There's no compassion keeping it alive. And there's no compassion in sacrificing and shechting it and then maybe throwing it over. It has to be sent in such a very cruel way of pushing it back and it's being smashed to pieces, which sounds really, again, like inhumane. But the idea is that the sins in the animal, that is what's being rectified and atoned. And the only way for atonement is that it's done in such a difficult, uncompassionate format. Now, again, the question asked, why is this all necessary? The Kohen Gadol, he's in the Holy of Holies. Let everything be done there. He's already davening for the Jewish people. He already the prerequisite to him entering was sacrificing part of the sacrifices, bringing in the incense, bringing in the blood from the korbanot. So why is it still necessary for the Azazel? Let everything be done. He's accessing a room which is connecting to the infinite light, which is in itself the idea of atonement. So why the necessity to do the second part of throwing the goat to Azazel in such an inhumane way? So Reb Nachman teaches again that the goal of entering light is what you take back with you, and then once you take it back, you have to now go down sometimes all the way to the domain called Hechal HaTmurot, which means the chamber of exchanges, which Reb Noson explains as basically the concealment that we have in this world, where everything is mixed up, good and evil is mixed up, falsehood and truth is mixed up, right and wrong is mixed up, pure and impure, kosher and non-kosher. This whole world is a concealment. And our goal is from within the concealment to collect the holy sparks. So the Kohen Gadol, going into the Holy of Holies, connects to a high level of light, but he has to leave afterwards. He has to go back out and bring and affect atonement. And then once he comes back out, then the completion of this is this goat sent to Azazel, where by being smashed on in a very very incompassionate way along the rocks and the edgy sharpness of this mountain, and being killed, and thus atoning for all the bad, and that's the finalization of the atonement. Is the idea now that the Kohen Gadol, after entering, now we have to go to the domain of technically evil, the domain of exchanges, and from there to extract any good left. And that's what the completion is, with the smashing of this animal to Azazel, freeing the good trapped because of the evil, and then that activates the finalization of the atonement. And this is a reminder for us that life is in and out. Judaism is in and out. Torah is in and out. Life is in and out. There's the highs and the lows, and both are needed for the purification process. All these devotions of Yom Kippur, of the Kohen Gadol, in and out, and two extreme devotions of the work of the Kohen Gadol, the Holy of Holies, and then Azazel, two extremes, is all part of the picture of activating atonement, so a person can then live with the light of the infinite light in this world, thus revealing Hashem's presence in the world. This is the bottom line of the Yom Kippur devotion. We should be zochet to have it activated every year on Yom Kippur, even today, without a Kohen Gadol doing the devotion, but us reciting the whole devotion of the Kohen Gadol. Number two, first of all, anticipating the coming of the Beit HaMikdash, the third Beit HaMikdash. But in the meantime, us going through the Parsha of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, and also going through all the details in the Musaf prayer, and us pretending we're in the temple, Korem Mishtachavim, where we have to bow down in the middle of the davening on Yom Kippur. Through all of that, Be'ezrat Hashem, we should activate some connection of the Kohen Gadol and the Holy of Holies, and it should be an atonement for all the Jewish people for the entire year, thus giving us a chance throughout all the ups and downs we go through during the year to still hold on, still manage to activate atonement whenever, through the accessing of the infinite light which took place on a general level on Yom Kippur. Shabbat Shalom.